So I'm in Rotterdam. I'm visiting Food Forest Overtuin, which is attached to the Troempenberg Botanic Gardens, and I'm talking to Max de Court, who's part of the Underground cooperative about the garden. So let's go in and take a look at this really interesting place. Okay, Rex, so tell us about this place.
We're at a food forest, the Overtuin, which basically translates like the garden on the other side of the street.
Oh, the Overtuin, yes, because Tyne means garden in Dutch, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
it does. Yeah, and where we just came in, the entrance is here, and we're standing here now. The
Yep.
whole allotment is about 1.5 hectares.
Oh,
It's our only real food forest
yeah.
in that sense.
Yes.
In Netherlands, we defined it can only be food forest if it's at least half an hectare.
Oh,
It has to have a lot of canopy trees.
oh,
That's kind of the definition that we made.
that Underground has made.
Not underground necessarily, but we had a green deal like with government.
Oh,
And one of the
yes.
definitions was this.
Oh,
And we
okay.
usually say half an hectare is big enough if it's an ecologically rich environment.
Yes.
If it's like a desert, it has to be at least 20 hectares.
Oh,
Why? Because of predator animals have the living space of a predator animal is at least
It's-
kind of 20 hectares
yeah. Okay.
to have
Yeah.
a healthy functioning
Yeah.
ecosystem.
Interesting.
That's the way of thinking.
Aha.
It's not 100% proof.
No.
The botanical garden has about 40 to 50,000 visitors every year.
Right.
And one of the problems was they hardly came to this garden because it was across the street.
It was across the road.
And you have to have a ticket and you have to know your way a bit.
Yep.
And the other thing was this, a part of it used to be of the Troempenberg estate, like the family estate.
Yep.
But it got changed around. And I think 25 years ago, this garden became part of the Arboretum again.
Uh-huh.
But the collection in the garden, it was like an English landscape style, but
Oh,
of course it's beautiful, but not something special
Mhm.
or that worthwhile to visit. So
Yep.
those two reasons made that not too many visitors came here.
yes. Okay.
And another problem that the botanical garden, the Arboretum, has is their core group of visitors, which pays for the whole thing,
Yep.
is getting grayer and older and older.
Yes.
So they're always looking to get more younger people to
Become
visit.
more contemporary, modernise. Yep.
They had an advisor to the board as a tree expert, and he was a colleague of ours in the Rotterdam Forest Garden Network.
Ah.
And he said, "Hey, could it be interesting to make a food forest here?"
Yeah.
So the board asked us to
Mm.
make a plan, and that's about 7 years ago.
Okay.
And it was 3 years ago that we started really implementing the food
Mm.
forest. And what we basically did is the parts that you see over here, those were like grass
Uh-huh.
and some solitaire trees.
Yep.
And all the edges were already established trees, shrubs,
Yes.
and whatnot.
Yes.
So the first thing we did was we already saw there were a lot of already interesting edible or spicy, useful trees and shrubs and plants over here. So we decided also like it doesn't make sense to cut anything away.
No.
So we decided to fill in mostly the blanks and add where we could some edible plants.
Yep.
But basically the idea is if all the trees die, we can replace them with edible ones
Over time.
over time.
Yep.
So that's the whole idea of this place. And the other thing was, well, there will be a lot of visitors here, but no one to tell them the story. And what we've noticed very much is the food forest or forest garden is a story that needs to be told.
Yes.
It doesn't explain itself.
No.
So
Yep.
we try to figure out how can we tell the story without being here. So at the beginning we made a catalog, a food forest catalog, and we cut up the food forest story into it's a perennial system. It's built in layers. The soil's really important. Food forest time is different than annual agriculture time.
Oh, that's what.
With
Yes. Yeah.
chestnut tree, and then how do you say that in English? A native or non-native species.
Yes.
And we tell the story of used to be native. For instance, the magnolia, the honeyberry, the kiwi berry. These used to grow in the Netherlands before the last ice ages.
Oh, okay.
They found remains of these plants in the
Here.
soil, so we know 100% they used to grow here, but they died off because of the last ice age. I don't know if you know the story about why the biodiversity in Europe is pretty low.
Yes.
It has to do with the last ice age because a lot of plants didn't survive.
That time. Yep.
And so we try to tell the story. Of course, you have to be careful which plants you introduce in a new from outside ecosystem.
Yep.
But at the same time, realize it's not like good plants, bad plants. It's way more nuanced
than that
story than that.
Yeah, sure.
And also, if you look at all the edible native plants, there's not too many in Europe.
Yeah. Okay.
Hazelnut, red currant.
Yes.
Cornelian cherry.
Yep.
And that's about it of the really worthwhile. Of course, oats, but it's not that much diversity.
There's a lot of diversity of the edibles. Yeah. Okay.
And
Interesting.
we also tell the story like, look at your supermarket or where you get your vegetables. That's 99% non-native species.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's also the discussion we try to.
Yeah. Very, very good. Yeah.
And what we did with the rest, we kind of made some food forest examples of how food forest can be. So here we made a food forest orchard.
Yep.
Basically, this is an old orchard, how they used to plant them in the Netherlands.
Oh, yep.
What a lot of people only think and know is that orchards used to be in the Netherlands like high apple trees or plums or pears, and then underneath grass with animals.
Yes.
What a lot of people don't know that they used to have orchards with underneath them red currants, black currants, gooseberries, and rhubarb. And that in itself is already a multi-layered system.
Three-layered forest, yeah.
And at the same time, we show over here that if you want to do, you can also have a food forest in rows, which is way more interesting for a farmer.
Yeah.
Because a romantic food forest is really nice for a private garden or a private food forest. You know exactly which plants where and when to harvest.
Yeah.
But when it comes to farming, you want to have it more efficient and more clear.
Yep.
So all the more farm scale food forest that we implement is always on rows. Yeah. So that's what we tell here.
Yep.
This is organic food forest. This is a garden that was added to the Arboretum about 5 years ago, and it was a garden that wasn't maintained for 20 years, totally overgrown, a lot of big trees.
Yep.
And in the middle, one big tree was already gone for a long while. So the succession kind of reset it, and so a lot of brambles and roses. We cut them away, and we're telling there basically the story of succession, and also that in an existing forest there's also succession phases when a big tree dies, or a storm, or a fire, or whatnot.
Fantastic.
And then here we have the shady food forest, because there are already some big trees there, which is relative, and the sunny water edge.
Okay, so this is translating to the shady wood.
Yeah.
Yep. I can sort of recognise that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's a bit the story of
great.
This place.
Yeah, I love the signage. It sort of tells the story really well in an interesting way.
Yeah.
It's reminiscent of
we
the
actually
beehive.
put some food forest history. So my colleague said, well, about 3,000 years ago, before Christ, the old native food forest people started tending them.
Yeah.
And then around 1200, we started developing more of the cultural landscape in the West.
Yes.
And having our ideas about how the landscape should be. Then we got more specialization of agriculture with machines and whatnot.
Very recent.
And then in the 70s, maybe reintroducing food forest systems in Europe by Robert Hart, and then Martin Crawford, analog forestry.
Analogs,
of course, and then Wouter van Eck, Ketelbroek in around 2000. And from there, Voedselbos, the Overtuin.
And Ketelbroek is Walter's site.
That's his private site.
That's his private site. Okay.
12 years old.
Oh, that's great. I love it. Really good signage to understand it.
Yeah, my colleague Paul's really good at these things.
So it's just photographs work, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love it. Nice detailing around the words.
Yeah, the only thing is what we noticed is like, I think 5% of people really read it. Most
people will walk by, but some people will want to read it.
One of our dreams is like an audio podcast tour kind of thing. So you just QR code and then
QR code, get on the app,
Yeah.
whatever.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the many plans that we have.
Yeah. All right, shall we wander? Shall we go for a walk?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think because of time, if you want to get more.
So being at Botanic Gardens, they want to do education for the public, and so when you initially walk into this food forest, there's a formal layout of some of the food forest area, displaying some of the plants, with some nice interpretation written into the stones, stepping stones. So we've got our plants that are named in the typical Botanic Gardens way. In this case, we're showing a daylily, Hemerocallis. Daylilies have a great edible flower. And there's another one, another edible plant. I'm not sure what that is. It looks like a, to me, it looks like a chestnut, but I'm not familiar with that botanical name. We've got horseradish here, of course. Love the mustardy taste of leaf. Hostas. Hostas have an edible shoot that comes up. One of the rhubarbs, perennial rhubarb, and hasn't been signed, which is unfortunately, but this is tuna or Chinese tune, which is a very popular edible perennial leaf from China, and currants, ribes. So yeah, just a little informal garden for people to have a look around. Probably could do better with more signage and a bit more maintenance, but hey, pretty good. This site's only 3 years old, so in terms of its planting. Perennial vegetable garden, just laid out in a way that people can understand, people automatically understand that this is a vegetable garden, just from the form and shape of the garden beds. But it's full of perennial plants, not annual. So, asparagus, we've got a perennial broccoli in here, one of the perennial brassicas. Yeah, and again, probably needs a bit more maintenance, but that's something I know that the team from Ondergrond is getting sorted. It's one of the salt bushes, leaf of a salty flavour. And it looks like sunchokes or Jerusalem artichokes in that part of the bed there too. So coming into another one of the food forest spaces within the Botanic Gardens. And yeah, really nice signage explaining what is going on here. I wish I could read Dutch, but I can't. But pictures tell 1,000 words, so yeah, really, really nice graphics here. And that's something I think is really important with food forests is signage, telling the story about them. Being such a young forest that was only planted 3 years ago, there's not a lot of structure here. The trees are very young. It's a little bit difficult to read the garden. I guess in this little garden, it's a little bit easier because there are rows of shrubs interspersed with trees, and in this case, the shrubs are currants, ribes, and yeah, so we can see that structure fairly easily. And so in this young forest, they've only planted the shrubbery and the trees, and the lower plants, the herbaceous layer, the ground covers and the vines will come later and slowly replace the grass that is here. Coming into another part of the same garden, they have planted out some more of the herbaceous layer, hostas, which have an edible shoot planted throughout here. The daylily, which has an edible flower. Another part of this botanical garden food forest, and we're in the shaded wood. So this garden is utilising the shade of existing trees, oak and ash, with an understory of lower plants below it. I can see some Szechuan pepper growing in here. I can see quince in the system. A bit of weediness that's happening here with singing nettles sort of taking over the ground layer. Well, once again, the aim at the moment is to get these lower trees up and growing, and later on they'll come through and slowly replace the stinging nettles and the grass with the understory edible layer through here. So yeah, the shaded wood food forest. Again, difficult to understand its structure because the trees and shrubbery are so young, but it will develop over time. Continuing to walk through, have one of the edible verbenas. This one's the chocolate berry. Delightful space. You know, some really interesting little areas, ponds and what have you. Looks like that could be a linden tree, a lime, edible leaf. Yeah, some plantings of comfrey. And so, you know, many of the existing botanical garden ornamentals are still here. Perhaps slowly, over time, they will be replaced. Sea buckthorn. Yep, Chinese tune. Or Chinese mahoney. Yeah, used a lot in the temperate zone. Food forests in England and Europe. Lots of plants here that I don't really know what they are. Something about my repertoire needing to expand into the temperate zone, understanding plants. But you know, that's what interpretive signage is all about. And so another great sign here in the Botanic Gardens. And there's a list of plants that are growing in this part of the garden. Again, really nice graphics, sort of telling the story of the place. Of course, you have to be interested in reading signs to enjoy them, and not everyone reads signage. That's understandable. People have different preferences. But again, it's just a really nice place to be in. And the last food forest garden in this botanical gardens, the part of the Overtuin food forest, and perhaps this is the most wild of all the food forest spaces here. Or my limited amount of Dutch, I interpret this as the organic food forest. So very wild. Can really only see where the new plantings are from the bamboo stakes that are in the ground. Once again, plants are very young, only been in the ground for 3 years. But over time, this will start to form some structure and probably be a lot easier interpreted by people as a forest with edible plants in it. But yeah, very hard to read as a edible garden space. This looks very messy. Again, there's a great story here in the signage, but to the average person walking around here, at this stage of this in the life of this garden, they might struggle to understand it or appreciate the garden as it is. So yeah, this is the food forest Overtuin in Rotterdam, part of the Troempenberg Botanic Gardens. Lovely spot. It's evolving. Very new garden, food forest, been integrated into an existing landscape, and it's going to be interesting to see how this changes over time and evolves into a fully developed food forest. So yeah, I'm going to take a seat and enjoy this beautiful space.